What started as a routine 30-hour fishing trip turned into the longest survival at sea in human history. José Salvador Alvarenga and his companion set out from Mexico's Pacific coast on November 17, 2012, expecting to return the next day with their catch. Instead, they found themselves battling a storm that damaged their motor within hours, setting in motion the drift that would last 438 days. Only one of them would survive to tell this story, and the surprising survival tactics he developed in total isolation reveal just how far human endurance can be pushed when faced with the ocean's vast emptiness. The Pacific Ocean's deadly scale in 2025. The Pacific Ocean covers 1/3 of Earth's entire surface, stretching across distances that dwarf every continent combined. This massive body of water extends from the Arctic in the north to the Antarctic in the south, and from Asia and Australia in the west to the Americas in the east. The distance between its furthest points measures over 19,000 kilometers, which means a commercial airliner flying at cruising speed would take nearly 21 hours to cross it in a straight line. Modern satellite technology has mapped every square meter of the Pacific surface with precision that would have seemed impossible just decades ago. Advanced tracking systems can pinpoint locations with remarkable accuracy, while radar satellites can detect objects as small as a life raft floating on the surface. Weather monitoring stations track storm systems in real time, and oceanographic buoys measure currents, temperatures, and wave heights across the entire basin. Despite this technological sophistication, the sheer scale of the Pacific makes rescue operations face odds that remain mathematically impossible to overcome. Current shipping lane data reveals that the vast majority of the Pacific Ocean remains completely empty of vessel traffic on any given day. The major shipping routes form narrow corridors between continents, leaving vast expanses of open water that no commercial vessel will traverse for months at a time. These shipping lanes concentrate around specific routes connecting major ports in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Tokyo, Shanghai, Sydney, and Panama. But between these corridors lie millions of square kilometers, where a person could drift for years without seeing another human being. The Northern Pacific route between North America and Asia sees the heaviest traffic. Yet even this busiest corridor represents less than 1% of the ocean's total surface area. Maritime dead zones exist throughout the Pacific, where even 2025 rescue technology struggles to operate effectively. These areas lie beyond the range of helicopter rescue operations, which typically extend only 300 nautical miles from shore. Coast Guard vessels cannot reach these zones quickly enough to matter during most emergencies, and weather conditions often prevent aircraft from conducting search operations for days at a time. The Central Pacific Gyre, a massive rotating current system, creates a particularly dangerous dead zone where debris and lost vessels can circle for years without approaching any inhabited land. Satellite coverage in these areas remains limited because the cost of monitoring such vast empty spaces exceeds the practical benefits for most rescue organizations. Modern search and rescue missions follow strict protocols that typically call off operations after 72 hours in open ocean conditions due to plummeting survival odds. This time frame reflects cold calculations about survival probability and resource allocation rather than any lack of concern for human life. Search patterns must expand outward from the last known position, creating search areas that grow by thousands of square kilometers each day. A person lost for 72 hours could be anywhere within a circle covering 50,000 square kilometers, assuming average current speeds and weather conditions. Survival statistics paint a grim picture of human endurance in Pacific Ocean conditions. The average person survives only 3 to 5 days without fresh water, and ocean conditions accelerate dehydration through salt exposure, sun damage, and the physical stress of staying afloat. Hypothermia can kill within hours in northern Pacific waters, while southern regions present the opposite threat of fatal heat exposure. The human body loses approximately 2 to 3 liters of water per day through normal processes, but exposure to salt water and sun can double or triple this rate. Most people cannot survive more than 7 days without water under ideal conditions, and ocean survival presents conditions that are far from ideal. GPS emergency beacons and satellite phones have reduced ocean survival incidents by 89% since 2012, transforming maritime safety in ways that would have saved countless lives in previous decades. Personal locator beacons can transmit distress signals to satellites anywhere on Earth, providing rescue coordinates accurate to within meters. Modern satellite phones work in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with the same reliability as land-based cellular networks. Emergency position indicating radio beacons automatically activate when they contact salt water, broadcasting location data that rescue services can track in real time. These devices have created a safety net that covers previously unreachable areas of the Pacific. Despite all technological advances, being lost in the Pacific without emergency equipment still means almost certain death. The ocean's size defeats even the most sophisticated rescue systems when people disappear without transmitting a distress signal. Weather conditions can disable satellites and prevent aircraft from conducting rescue operations for days at a time. Ocean currents move at unpredictable speeds and directions, carrying people far from their last known positions before rescue operations can begin. The Pacific's depth averages over 4,000 meters, which means that equipment failures or accidents often leave no trace for rescue teams to follow. New 2025 systems combine satellites, drones, and AI to focus searches hours after distress signals, while computer models can predict drift patterns with unprecedented accuracy. Automated distress detection systems monitor radio frequencies for emergency transmissions, and international coordination protocols ensure that rescue resources can be deployed across national boundaries. Yet the fundamental challenge remains unchanged. The mathematical reality of Pacific Ocean survival creates a paradox that defies human comprehension. A person floating in the Pacific has approximately the same chance of being found as a specific grain of sand on a beach. Ocean currents can carry someone 50 kilometers in a single day, while weather conditions limit search flights to specific hours when visibility and wind conditions permit safe operations. Even with perfect weather and unlimited resources, covering the search area for a week-old emergency would require thousands of aircraft working simultaneously. Anyone surviving longer than a week in these conditions enters territory that challenges everything we know about human endurance. The longest confirmed survival times in ocean conditions rarely exceed 10 to 14 days, making extended survival seem impossible rather than improbable. The human body simply lacks the resources to function without fresh water, food, and shelter for extended periods. Exposure to salt water causes skin breakdown and infection, while constant sun exposure leads to severe burns and dehydration. The psychological stress of isolation and hopelessness often proves fatal even when physical survival remains possible. Alvarenga's survival represents an anomaly that defies every known statistic about ocean survival in the modern era. His 438-day ordeal occurred in an environment where rescue services expected to find only bodies after the first week of searching. Yet for one experienced fisherman working the waters off Mexico's Pacific coast, what began as a routine day would soon test these impossible odds. The fishing trip that changed everything. November 17, 2012, began like thousands of other days for José Salvador Alvarenga in the small fishing village of Costa Azul, Mexico. The sun rose over the Pacific horizon as it had for decades, casting the same golden light across the weathered docks where generations of fishermen had prepared their boats for another day at sea. Alvarenga went through his morning routine with the practiced efficiency of someone who had spent most of his adult life working these waters. He checked his equipment, reviewed weather conditions, and prepared for what seemed like just another fishing trip. The economic pressures driving fishermen like Alvarenga to take risks were brutal and unforgiving. A single successful day catching sharks, marlins, and sailfish could generate income equivalent to a full week of wages for most families in the region. This harsh financial reality meant that fishermen regularly pushed the boundaries of safety, venturing further from shore and staying out longer than might be wise. The Pacific waters off Mexico's coast held valuable fish species that commanded high prices in local markets. But reaching the prime fishing grounds required traveling significant distances from the safety of coastal waters. For experienced fishermen like Alvarenga, these calculated risks were simply part of making a living from the sea. His fishing vessel represented typical equipment for small-scale Pacific coast operations in 2012. The 7-meter fiberglass skiff featured no cabin or protective covering, leaving its occupants completely exposed to sun, wind, and waves. A single outboard motor provided propulsion, while a refrigerator-sized icebox offered the only storage space for their hope for catch. The boat carried basic navigation equipment, including a simple radio and compass, but lacked the sophisticated safety systems that would become standard in later years. Compared to modern 2025 fishing vessel safety standards, Alvarenga's boat was essentially a floating death trap. Today's mandatory GPS tracking systems, automated distress beacons, and weather alert networks simply did not exist for small fishing operations in 2012. Weather reports indicated storm activity developing in the area, but Alvarenga and his companion made the calculated decision to proceed with their fishing plans. This choice reflected both the economic pressures they faced and the confidence that came from years of experience working these waters. Modern fishing operations in 2025 operate under strict protocols that prohibit departing when weather warnings are issued, but such regulations were not enforced in 2012. Fishermen relied on their own judgment, local knowledge, and basic weather information that often proved inadequate for predicting rapidly changing ocean conditions. The routine preparations that morning would soon transform into life-or-death survival tools. Loading the small refrigerator with ice seemed like standard procedure for preserving their catch, but this equipment would later provide crucial storage for rainwater. The basic radio they carried for communication with shore would become their only link to the outside world until its battery died. Even their minimal food supplies, packed for a planned 30-hour trip, would need to last far longer than anyone could imagine. Every piece of equipment loaded onto their small boat that morning carried significance that neither man could have anticipated. Ezequiel Cordoba joined Alvarenga as his fishing partner for this trip, creating a partnership that would face the ultimate test of human endurance. Cordoba was younger and less experienced than Alvarenga, but eager to earn his share of the profits from a successful fishing expedition. The two men had worked together before and understood each other's strengths and weaknesses on the water. Their relationship represented the kind of working partnership common among small-scale fishermen, where trust and cooperation were essential for both success and survival. The journey to their chosen fishing grounds required traveling 120 kilometers from the safety of Costa Azul's protected harbor. This distance represented more than just physical space. It measured the gap between civilization and the vast emptiness of the Pacific Ocean. As their small boat moved further from shore, the familiar landmarks of the Mexican coast gradually disappeared behind them. The mountains that marked the location of their home village became smaller and more distant with each passing hour. Radio communications with shore grew weaker as they approached the outer limits of their equipment's range. Storm warnings continued to reach them through their radio as they traveled toward the fishing grounds, but both men chose to ignore these increasingly urgent messages. Their decision reflected the dangerous confidence that comes from years of successful fishing trips and the belief that their experience could overcome whatever challenges the ocean might present. The warnings described deteriorating weather conditions and advised all small craft to return to port immediately, but the potential profits from a successful fishing day outweighed these concerns in their minds. Weather forecasting technology in 2012 lacked the precision and real-time updating capabilities that fishermen rely on today. Satellite imagery was less detailed, computer models were less accurate, and communication systems were more limited than the comprehensive weather monitoring networks available in 2025. Modern fishermen receive constant updates about wind speeds, wave heights, and storm movements through GPS-enabled devices that connect directly to meteorological databases. These technological advances have dramatically reduced the number of fishing vessels caught in dangerous weather conditions. As they reached their intended fishing spot, both men focused on the work ahead of them. They prepared their fishing lines, checked their equipment, and began the process of locating and catching the valuable fish species that made their long journey worthwhile. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly in all directions around their tiny vessel, but this vastness seemed manageable to experienced fishermen who had worked these waters for years. The storm that would change everything was already building strength on the horizon, though its true intensity remained hidden from their view. Dark clouds gathered in the distance, while wind patterns began shifting in ways that suggested the weather warnings they had dismissed were about to prove catastrophically accurate. Neither man realized they were about to face conditions that would test every survival skill they possessed. When the storm hit at 1 a.m., the Pacific Ocean transformed from a manageable fishing ground into a killing machine. The storm struck with a violence that caught both men completely off guard, turning their small boat into a cork bobbing in chaos. Waves that had been gentle swells just hours earlier now towered above their 7-meter vessel, threatening to crush them with tons of water. The wind howled with a sound neither man had heard before, drowning out their shouts to each other as they struggled to maintain control of their boat. Lightning illuminated the ocean around them in brief, terrifying flashes that revealed the true scale of the waves bearing down on them. The storm's intensity exceeded every weather prediction they had received. Meteorologists had warned of rough conditions, but nothing in their forecasts suggested the monster that now surrounded their tiny vessel. Wind speeds reached levels that turned ordinary ocean spray into stinging projectiles, while waves built to heights that dwarfed their boat. The storm created a wall of water and wind that seemed designed to destroy everything in its path. Modern weather prediction systems in 2025 would have detected this storm's true power days in advance, but the limited forecasting technology of 2012 had completely underestimated what was coming. Faced with immediate disaster, Alvarenga and Cordoba made split-second decisions that would determine their fate. They cut their fishing lines with desperate efficiency, abandoning the catch that had brought them so far from shore. Everything they had worked for that day went overboard as they dumped their gear, their ice, and anything else that might weigh down their boat or catch the wind. The refrigerator that had been meant to preserve their fish became dead weight that threatened to sink them. These actions saved their lives in the short term by making their boat more maneuverable, but also stripped away equipment they would desperately need later. The storm created waves that crashed over their boat with crushing force, filling it with water faster than they could bail it out. Each wave threatened to be the one that would flip their vessel completely over or drive it beneath the surface permanently. The men took turns steering, while the other used whatever containers they could find to throw water back into the ocean. Their small motor screamed at maximum power as Alvarenga fought to keep the bow pointed into the waves, knowing that taking one of these monsters broadside would end their lives instantly. For 6 hours, they battled through darkness and mountainous seas in a desperate race back toward the Mexican coast. The storm seemed to follow them, maintaining its intensity as they struggled through the night. Navigation became impossible in the chaos, with their compass spinning wildly and familiar landmarks erased by sheets of rain and spray. They could only head in what they hoped was the direction of shore, praying that their motor would hold out long enough to reach safety. The physical exhaustion of fighting the storm for hours left both men drained, but stopping their efforts meant certain death. Dawn brought the most beautiful sight either man had ever seen. The mountains of the Mexican coast appeared on the horizon like a promise of salvation. They were only 24 kilometers from shore, close enough to make out individual peaks and valleys that marked familiar territory. The storm had begun to weaken, though dangerous swells still rocked their boat. Both men felt a surge of hope as they realized they had survived the worst night of their lives and were almost home. The village of Costa Azul lay somewhere behind those mountains, along with families who had probably spent the night worrying about their safe return. At that moment of approaching triumph, disaster struck with devastating timing. Their motor coughed, sputtered, and died completely. The engine that had carried them through 6 hours of hell chose the worst possible moment to fail. Without power, Their boat immediately became a victim of the wind and current rather than a vessel under their control. The silence after the motor died was more terrifying than all the noise of the storm had been. They tried frantically to restart the engine, pulling the cord again and again, but it remained dead. The mountains that had seemed so close suddenly felt impossibly far away. Their radio still worked, offering one final lifeline to the world they were about to leave behind. Alvarenga grabbed the handset and broadcast their position with desperate urgency, explaining that their motor had failed and they were drifting away from shore. The voice of their boss crackled through the static, clear enough to understand his response that he was coming to find them. For a few precious minutes, rescue seemed possible. Another boat was already heading in their direction, and their exact location was known. All they had to do was wait and try to stay in the same area until help arrived. The radio battery died with a final electronic wheeze, cutting their last connection to the outside world. The silence that followed was absolute and crushing. No more voices from shore, no more updates about rescue efforts, no more human contact of any kind. The psychological impact of that moment was devastating. They had been talking to safety just seconds before, and now they were completely alone in the vast Pacific. The radio had been their lifeline, their proof that people on shore knew where they were and were coming to help. The unusually strong winds that had helped create the storm now became their worst enemy. Despite being only 24 kilometers from shore, the wind began pushing their powerless boat back toward the open ocean. They watched helplessly as the distance between them and safety grew larger with each passing hour. The mountains became smaller and less distinct as the current carried them away from everything they knew. Without paddles, oars, or sails, they had no way to fight the forces that were dragging them toward the deep Pacific. The mountains of Mexico grew smaller and fainter as the hours passed, until they disappeared entirely below the horizon. The familiar coastline that had marked the boundary of their world was gone, replaced by empty ocean that extended beyond the limits of vision. Both men understood that they were now facing a situation that few people had ever survived. Back on shore, someone had heard their final radio transmission and knew exactly where to begin looking for them. The search that couldn't find them. The boss, who had promised to come for them, launched an immediate search operation within hours of losing radio contact. He organized fishing boats from Costa Azul and neighboring villages, creating a small fleet of vessels that began combing the waters where Alvarenga and Cordoba had last been heard from. These local fishermen knew the area better than anyone and understood the currents, weather patterns, and likely drift directions better than any official rescue service. They searched through the night and into the next day, covering the most probable locations where the disabled boat might have drifted. Search and rescue technology in 2012 relied heavily on visual searches from ships and aircraft, methods that proved painfully inadequate for the vast Pacific Ocean. Coast Guard aircraft flew predetermined search patterns, but pilots had to rely on their eyes to spot a 7-meter boat in an ocean that stretched to the horizon in every direction. Radio equipment could only detect distress signals within limited ranges, and without an active beacon, the missing boat was essentially invisible to electronic detection systems. Weather conditions made aerial searches even more difficult, with clouds, rain, and rough seas reducing visibility to almost nothing during crucial search periods. Mexican Pacific Coast search and rescue operations in 2012 followed protocols that reflected the reality of limited resources and vast search areas. The Mexican Navy coordinated with Coast Guard units and local fishing fleets, but their success rates for finding missing vessels dropped dramatically after the first 24 hours. Statistics showed that most successful rescues occurred within 6 hours of the initial distress call, with very few people found alive after 48 hours in open ocean conditions. The combination of strong currents, unpredictable weather, and the sheer size of the search area created mathematical challenges that even unlimited resources could not overcome. The search radius expanded exponentially as each day passed without finding any trace of the missing fishermen. On day 1, searchers focused on a circle roughly 50 kilometers in diameter around the last known position. By day 2, ocean currents and wind could have carried the boat anywhere within a 200-kilometer radius. Day 3 expanded the possible search area to over 100,000 square kilometers, an area larger than most countries. The mathematical impossibility of the situation became clear as searchers realized they were looking for a tiny boat in an area that would take weeks to cover completely. From the searchers' perspective, the frustration was overwhelming.